We're now going to move into our next panel discussion on the topic investing in the plate, what investors look for in food startups. The F&B space is sizzling with innovation, but what truly attracts investor appetite? This panel brings together leading VCs, strategic investors, and founders to decode what makes a food startup fundable. From scalability and unit economics to brand story and shelf life, we'll explore the key ingredients investors are hungry for in India's evolving food landscape. Please welcome our panelists. We have with us Narayan Manepally, CEO and co-founder, Geist Brewing Company. Please give him a big round of applause as he comes forward. RamakrishnaGanesh, investor and partner, multiple ventures, Sally and Street by 1522. Sharad Bansal, founder and managing partner, Warm Up Ventures. Hari Balasubramanian, advisor, Ivy Cap Ventures and member at Indian Angel Network. And moderating this discussion is Venk Krishnan, CEO of New Ventures. Please give them a big round of applause once again. And with that, it's over to you, Venk.
Hello. So I think it's a privilege to moderate a session like this with some of the successful entrepreneurs and investors in our ecosystem. And some of them I know personally. I'm an investor with Narayan from the very beginning. I've been fortunate to be one of the early investors with Geist and one of the impressive stories which I think we have in Bangalore. Hari is another angel investor, but I would like you guys to talk about what you have done yourself because I'm forgetting names, sorry. In fact, why don't we do this? Why don't we have each of you introduce yourself and what you have done, and then we can go. Because I knew Narayan, I was an investor, I just did it, but let's go around the table. Maybe start with you.
Thanks, Venk. So, hi everyone, this is Sharad. I run this early stage fund called Warm Up Ventures. It's a fairly new fund. We started investing from September 2023. There are three partners. All of us come from venture experience. I used to run an edtech company last 9 years based out of Jaipur. Other partner comes from agri-tech background, and another partner is a second generation entrepreneur. He runs a brand called Jaipur Rugs. All three of us were doing early stage angel checks earlier, and having been on the other side of the table as a founder, we thought that we can add value being an investor. So from the fund one, we have done about 18 investments so far. 2 of them has been into food category, and we have been evaluating a couple of more. We have invested in companies like Boa Bhai, which is a bubble tea QSR, and a coffee QSR as well, nothing before coffee. Both of these brands have shown exceptional growth in the last two years, and I think some of the insights we'll share during the course. Recently launched a newer fund of about 300 crores in December and planning to invest. So, but mostly seed and pre-seed stages that we have been writing. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ram, and I come from a tech background. Everybody wants to be in the F&B space. Going to multiple restaurants, you feel that the good space to be in. So ventured out to Street 1522. Chetan spoke some time back. He is the founder, and then I'm the investor at the Street 1522. Then I wanted to get my hands dirty, deep into the food industry. So we started another restaurant called Sally at Mall of Asia. That's Phoenix. So that's a little more that I got involved in the restaurant. We'll talk about it a little more. Yeah, I have multiple other ventures in the carbon space and the deep tech space. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Hari Balasubramanian. I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, but last 13, 14 years, I've been mostly in the startup ecosystem as an angel investor. I lead deals. I sit in many investment committees. I don't know anything about food, but people think I know a lot because I was the first person to give Wow Momo a term sheet. then Bauxite, then Mukunda Foods, a number of such companies which have all become very successful. I work very closely with food entrepreneurs. It's a very tough space, and I do relate and empathize with food entrepreneurs. And I like, investing in categories which can be created in the food space because the opportunities are amazing. And some of the best exits that we have got till now is in the food space.
Narayan Manepally with Geist Brewing Company. We are South India's first distribution craft brewery. So we are a brewery that makes craft beer and we sell it to restaurants, clubs, pubs, anybody who's not a microbrewery. We are in 450 locations in 4 regions across India. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't want to look at it as a conflict of interest, but I would recommend highly you guys going and trying Narayan's beer. It's one of the, if you're a beer aficionado in particular, I think you should try it out. And I think we were just talking, me and Narayan, I think one of the first things which comes to any food business is the brand, right? If there's a brand recall, people will go and invest more money, spend more money buying those products. So branding is very important. Like in the software business, if you look at it, it's more about telling a story to a customer, right? Whereas in food business, it's all about building a brand. And to build a brand, you need great customer service. You need a lot of things. So with that being said, Narayan, I know you have your own views on investors, right? Because investors do beat you up and I'm one of them. So that being said, what would you as a founder give an advice to an investor?
My experience has been this. You put 3 investors in a room, you'll get 5 opinions. So it's been an incredibly challenging journey for us because we made a conscious decision not to go in the early days with venture capital and PE funding because by the way, no offense to any investors, and there are prestigious guys here, but I remember the early days when I went to raise money from a VC company, the person on the other side of the table said, I started presenting and I was nervous and all that kind of stuff. And the guy said, Narayan, just stop. I don't care about your business. To me, you're a football. I'm going to try to kick you as high as I can to get the valuations that I want. And some other idiot's going to pick you up and try to kick you even higher. So that was a moment that I realized and said, we don't want to do VC funding. So we're going to get angels and friends and family to invest in the business because I don't want to go in a direction that I have a very fixed direction I want to take the business in. And I don't want to go in a direction that a VC or a PE wants. So we have now 50 investors in the company who've put varying amounts of money. And by the way, one of the largest investors that we have, who I actually personally consider to be a god on earth, is Mr. Krishnan, who is a person who's never had a drink and has never smoked a cigarette in his life. And so this person basically told me one thing, which is, whatever you do in your business, make sure that you run it wisely, run it correctly, and don't ruin my name. So my first and only point that I want to make is this, which is choose your investors wisely, because they are going to decide how much of pain you're going to be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And if you have many investors on your cap table, just make sure that there's alignment generally before you get their money.
Okay, that's a good segue into something else. Okay, sorry. Maybe I'll ask Hari, what's one investor pitch mistake you have seen being made? Okay. And what would you advise early stage food entrepreneurs who are looking for funding?
See, I think many food entrepreneurs at the early stage, they talk about many things which are very general. Whereas you get a very small attention span of an investor. So it's very important to talk about the insights that you have found in your business or whatever you have done with customers or whatever your idea is. It's very, very important to be original and authentic, because that is what is going to attract an investor to hear you more. So typically people would say there are so many brands, we are also one more brand and the other thing, but they don't talk about insights, and that typically, becomes a problem. So it's very important for an investor to understand that you have done some deep dive into whatever you want to do, and you've got some actual, insights or an assumption which you are very strong about, and you now want to test it out. So I would say that be very specific to your experience and your passion, and talk about something which is very unique, which cannot be just taken from a public domain.
I think I'll go to Ram. What shifts when you move from a large format to a smaller setups? I hope, like when you have a large conglomerate versus a small, what would you look for?
So my first investment was in the larger format. That's the one which we're talking about, the 55,000 square foot, the bar segment. So that was more an investment, and it's a very large format. People, multi-cuisine, people like to experience and so on. When you create a small format, it's more intimacy. You want to focus on customer. You want to, make sure that the customers are happy, and your repeated customers are much higher. So when, the first brand, that is Street 1522, that I've been part of and invested, it was more an investor role. Narayan said, we go every, weekly or monthly once and say, hey, what's happening? Where is the P&L? Where is this? Where is that? Then we really don't want to know what's happening on ground. Suddenly you see a huge turnover and we figure out, okay, it's really doing well. But operationally, I understand there is a lot of challenges that happens in a restaurant. Like in the last talk, Chetan was telling about, whether it is the excise department or the local running a bar is a big challenge. Second,
Narayan can attest to that.
Yeah, definitely. The second one, I wanted to get my hands dirty. I wanted to dive into to see, what really is in the plate and how does it work, and how much it cost actually to do a biryani or a palau, what you call, right? So it's important to know that business as an investor for us to see if you want to continue in this space or really you're going to make money or not. So that's when the Sally happened, which is from a 800-seater to a 90-seater. The model is that it's smaller format, which is working really better in India, better in Bangalore especially. So the last talk which you had, right, 27-seater was doing really well to is equal to an 800-seater. So I think it's good to try out different model. But as an investor now, I feel that it's very important to work with the founder who knows the stuff. It's very important to know what is large term goal in the entire system, whether you're building a brand or you're making money. So as an investor, it's very important, because F&B is a very lucrative business when you look from outside. Everybody wants to be a restaurant. Everybody, suddenly they make one dosa at home. You feel that I can open a restaurant. So that's been the case in most of the friends that I've met.
Especially today with Rameshwaram. Everybody talks about Rameshwaram, right? And there is, I think everybody thinks that they can start a Rameshwaram, but, and I think to an extent, location plays a big part when you start, right?
Yeah, it's all about not just about location, customer satisfaction, working on the plate to make sure that you deliver what they want. So it's chef sitting here, so he knows how a restaurant, customer versus the investor versus the people who come to the place. It's a different set of people who come to, whether it's a South Indian or a North Indian. And Bangalore being a market is very difficult to serve sometimes, right? So it's important. I know everybody wants to business. I also wanted to, from a deep tech conferencing business wanted to get into a restaurant. I went and sat in multiple bars and I thought, oh, I can also do it. And I tried doing it. I realized the problems that I face. Yeah, but it's growing, but it's a good learning. It's good in a good learning curve. It's been 6.5 years. We sustained, so that means it's running really well. So,
I think that 1522 brand, I think it is resonating a lot with people, and I see a lot of youngsters saying that they want to go to 1522 bar. I think your multiples.
We're about 14 of them, including the two.
I'm not trying to plug 1522, but as part of the question. Coming to Sharad, I have this question. Are investors today more bullish on niche categories, like you mentioned kombucha, spiced honey, vegan cheese, or mass market products?
So I think if you look from the psyche of a venture capitalist, they of course want to go into larger TAMs. But now in the food, like my other panelists have mentioned, that food is a highly competitive space. So it's very difficult if you try to capture a big TAM in one go. So what is the ideal approach of entering in that market is to find your micro niche. That okay, if I am creating a brand, let's say for example a boba bhai, they are going behind that boba teas and bubble teas and bubble shakes, all of this category. Eventually, if you are able to win that market, win that particular category, you have the opportunity to expand. So that is one way of going. So a lot of brands that are coming into a particular category of cuisine, or they're coming into a particular target segment. So a lot of brands emerging for kids, or within kids, they're into kids sauces. If you're able to win the customer's trust in that particular micro category, then it is much easier to expand, and that has happened even not just in food but into other consumer brands as well. So that is why it is easier. It takes lesser resources to win that trust. It takes lesser. It makes it easier to control the supply chain of that category. And once you're able to prove that within that micro category, it is much easier to scale with the bigger resources you have. So I think that's why if you ask VCs, they want niches more as of the trade.
Very good. Narayan, I'll come to you again. What advice would you give an early stage food startup founder who just been, some of you may be thinking of starting a business? What is your advice? I know you said you won't go to a VC, which is which is out there, but what other advice would you give?
I think in the food space, of course, everything is valued differently by the investor, right? So for example, if you have a food and beverage outlet or a restaurant, that you'd be hard pressed to get valuations, anything above 2, for example. So 1.5 to 2 is roughly what you're going to be getting. Then there's FMCGs, there's D2C, there's a whole bunch of these other categories, right? So what's the question again?
What advice would you give them?
So I think if you're first off, the way I look at my business is this, which is when the investors would ask me and say, is this a passion project for you? My answer generally would be yes. But I've realized that there are multiple more P's after that, right? It's just not passion, but it's persistence, it's profit, and it's prayer. Okay, because you absolutely have to pray every single day to make sure that your business goes and you're making more right decisions than wrong. So I think anybody who feels that they're passionate about some product and that they want to scale this product, number one, just do your research, because honestly, the research, of course, is kind of very sketchy, but look at multiple places where you can triangulate the information and say, this is kind of making sense. Okay, number one. Number two, very, very easy to kind of look at this and say, this is a passion project for me, and I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to become a billionaire, or whatever your goals are. The problem is this: reality bites, okay, and it bites hard. So if you don't have persistence, you're going to get screwed at some point in time. The third, most investors who are passionate about a particular product and have the persistence are not looking at the bottom line. You have to run a food business like a manufacturing unit. You need to be looking at every single, in our company, we call it Chavannika Dhanda, right? You're looking at the last 25 paisa to figure out, is this making sense on a day-to-day basis? So that's my advice to people who are trying to get into the space. Remember the 4 Ps. It's passion, it's persistence, it's profit, and it's prayer.
Great. Good one. And I think I can vouch for Narayan, because I've been very closely following Narayan, and then third wave is another investment which I was involved in. So I think the story is very similar, in terms of the growth and, and what feedback, what you are giving is very, very pertinent to that, right? Maybe I'll come back to Ram. Should brands initially focus on hype, right? Like a 100-meter dash, right? To get attention and capital, or work towards creating a halo like a marathon?
I think first it's good to create the customer base, because all of this works only if you have a great customer base. Because in the F&B space, I've realized only one thing is that customers go talk about it. Then your social media reels can talk only about for some time, but your customer who consumes food and your repeated customer is what makes a brand work well. Look at, for example, I'm just
No, the reason I ask that question is I see a lot of brands coming out and they pour a lot of money, right? They pour a lot of money, and I think we have classic examples like Bira and many others, right? They pour a lot of money initially, but they don't have the sustainability in the end because they have run out of money, right? So, and I think I keep coming back to Narayan and Sushant, that third wave, I think both of them, they wanted to do step by step the right way, right? They didn't want to just spend all their money because they didn't know when it's going to be a rainy day. So that being said, that's why I asked this question. There is a thought there saying that you should create a brand, right? Try to create a brand quickly. But how sustainable is that is my question.
I don't see anybody can create a brand quickly, because that doesn't work, right? I agree. So, and also I agree with Narayan, your bottom line, that saving that 25 paisa is what works for a business to be successful, than spending that money huge on the marketing and then going all out and then not able to sustain the business with having good profits.
Yeah.
If you don't have profit.
The thing, but that is not what many do, right? Especially today, I think funding is difficult. If you look at about 4-5 years back in the 20s, 18s and 19s, anybody who came with a new brand, right? If they had a good story and a passion to say that, or a story, people were funding them, right?
Because there was no case study. Today there is a lot of case study going back and say, okay, this didn't work, this worked. So what they did right, what they didn't do right. So it's easy to analyze that. So that's what it works today, right? So if you are able to analyze, and because there is a lot of money in the market, especially with a lot of startups made money, and the investors. If you look at a lot of F&B space which has come up in the recent past, it's not the guys who have experience in the F&B space. It's only one person who has the passion and persistent, what he says, right? But the money is not coming from them, right? Money is coming from either a VC or an individual investor who sometimes understands the business or doesn't understand the business. So what they put money is to make money. So now that's where, again, going back to Narayan, that the football game which happens, right?
Good one. Coming back to Sharad, I'll come back to Hari also after that. Now, if you were to invest in a food startup yourself today, what would be the 3 non-negotiables before writing a check? Right? What are the 3 non-negotiables for you before you write the check?
So I think the one very important learnings that I have learned from my own investments is the founder's ability to understand the unit economics. Most of the brands, especially in the QSR or restaurant category, have spoiled the business because of the monthly unit economics. If you look at monthly PNL, and that most of that goes into real estate.
CM1, CM2, CM3.
And most of the losses are coming actually from the real estate, because you have taken a location which might be good, but that economically is not making sense from the potential of revenue you can make from that particular location. So the founder's ability to understand the PNL and the components of it very deeply is one very important factor. Second is that how fast the founder can go. And now I'm giving the perspective from a VC. This might differ if someone is investing like an angel check, or when an investor is coming at a private equity level. But at a VC level, when the business is, let's say, roughly doing a monthly business of 10 lakhs to 1 crore, at that level, I want to see that aggression in the founder, that how fast they will be able to grow. So as Narayan has also mentioned, that the multiples eventually become 1.5, 2x, and perhaps 1x also at the time of acquisition. If a VC founder is doing a annual 5 crore business, I can't give them a 1.5x multiple. I have to give them maybe a 5x or 10x multiple. So I want to know that if the business can run 20x from here, then I might make 4 or 5x from the business. So that is the aggression that you need in the founder if they are looking for VC capital, or do not raise VC from the VCs. So I think that is second. And the third is founders' understanding of consumer psychology. So founders sometimes know all the economics, all the operational capabilities. They would have been having a distribution network, but they really do not understand the consumer psychology. Even I might not know, but I want to learn things that I might not know. Sure. And if the founder is able to tell that, I think that brings a lot of conviction from me. So these are the three things I think that builds conviction on a founder. And I mean, if we want to back that category.
Hari, do you want to add to that?
See, in my journey, I've been passionate as an entrepreneur, and I was supporting entrepreneurs early. Then when I saw that, a lot of money can be made in this, and I started sitting in venture funds and investment committees, I realized that the job there is to ensure that you take money and you multiply that money for others. So I would say that when we look at a very early stage founder as an angel investor, I would look at how good that guy is, how passionate that person is he willing to learn, is he willing to dirty his hands, is he willing to go and create a market which does not exist, or is he competing in an existing market where he's got a new way of approaching it. For example, we have all had idli, dosa, sambar for donkey's years, but we never had a McDonald's for idli, dosa, sambar, right? Why? This was a question which troubled me all my life, that why can't we do something which a foreign brand can do? Even today, there is no brand which actually can be a South Indian QSR. But I have recognized that there are entrepreneurs who has a dream for that, and they're still competing in that space and working in that space, applying the latest technology and others. These entrepreneurs would not be touched by a VC, but as an angel investor, I would definitely go and back them up, because they have a story which is very strong, and if they can execute it properly, sky is the limit for them. For example, just in Bangalore, a particular brand can do 150 crores profitably in 1 to 1.5 years. That's the size of the market. So I do see phenomenal opportunities for existing categories or for creating new categories. In India today, we have a fashion for Korean or Japanese and all these type of food. So anybody who's creating a new category or bringing in a foreign category and customizing it for Indian taste, they are doing very well. If you ask, young people today, the Gen Z, they don't want to have idli, dosa, sambar. They want to have a burger, or they want to have, other types of drinks that we typically have not had in our childhood. So the market is changing, and we have a very large market in India. All types of customers are there. So anything that you take, if you go deep into it, there is a huge market to be done. And that is what, entrepreneurs should see. And I typically look at whether that understanding is there in terms of the market for the entrepreneur, whether he understands that, he or she understands that they really need to change very fast because the market is changing, and what is the customer segment that they're tapping. That customer segment has got very different preferences, and today we have got at least 5 different customer segments in the food category, and each one of them are very different and distinct from the others. So it's very important to focus on your customer. Make your customer your investor. That is the best advice I give to all founders.
Okay, very good. Very good point. Narayan, I keep coming back to you on an investor, your views on investors, right? How would you describe an ideal investor for a food startup, right? What did you seek out? I'm sure, your interests are aligned in some way, right? An investor, obviously, most investors are investing other people's money. They're not investing their own money many times, right? So when people say the VC is pushing me to do this, is because he is responsible and he's answerable to others, right? And so is some of these businesses venture investable, right? Because there is a difference between a lifestyle business. In many cases, like a restaurant, it can be a lifestyle business. But if you're going to create a franchise kind of approach, then maybe a fundable business from an investor. So what, according to you, is an ideal investor in this space, having been in this space for so long?
I mean, honestly, like I said earlier, choose your investor wisely, and that wise.
But you'll know only that after the fact.
Fair enough. But, and that's true, by the way. But I
Everybody's
think
not a Chris.
if there was one thing I would look for an investor, especially when you're working in a food and beverage business, you're putting something in people's mouths, and that comes with a huge amount of responsibility, right? Now, you can't scale this rapidly and without making mistakes. Now, I understand that the VCs are responsible for their investments and their investors, and they have to do what is right by them. But the point is, I take this really, really personally. And so, in our company, we say at our outlets, by the way, I am the most accidental restaurateur that you will find. Our restaurant started because it was a COVID project. We call it a COVID baby. But the motto that we have in our company, and I'm sure many, many restaurateurs feel the same way, which is we want to feed our customers like we're feeding our family, right? This is the motto that we have in our company. So I think at least for the set of investors that we have gone after, and we have actively, like I said earlier on, not done VCs and PEs, the one word that comes to mind is patience.
And I want
time.
to interject here. I think the audience should know that Narayan is not an ideal beer founder. He's an Intel. He was a former Intel employee. Has patents. He used to be in the US. Because of passion, he used to brew beer with his garage. Am I right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying, I found that very amazing that somebody with that kind of background has decided to start a brewery. So I think that background was important for everybody to understand what you are saying.
Yeah, so I think for me, coming back to the point is it's patience. After you've chosen the investor, and again, we've made mistakes. There have been investors who've been, come to me with a bamboo saying, "Where's my money?" This happens. And you do the very best that you can to sustain your business and do the very, very best to keep the business going and growing. So, yeah.
Any points from there based on what Narayan said?
I have to agree with him on everything because I'm on both the side now, an investor and also running a restaurant full-fledged. So purely from the restaurant running point of view or investor point of view, if you look at it's very important to bridge that gap. What we look at from generally a founder is the clarity on not inflated numbers, because that's what most of the restaurants today when they pitch. I don't know if Hari agrees, a lot of inflated numbers assume that this restaurant is in Sarjapur or this restaurant in this area, and this is the number of walk-ins we will get, and it's very difficult to put that number, and practicality is very important in this space, to understand what is your minimum number, minimum cost per plate. So these are the kind of stuff that we look for. It's important to make the restaurant work.
No, I agree, and I think anybody who is starting a startup or a food business have to be aware of these facts. It's a long drawn game, right? It is not like the software business. You build once and you sell 1,000,000 times, right? In the food, you have to be there every day, be at the restaurant, make sure that the quality is not there. One bad quality, if like somebody was telling me he went to a Subway and he found something in his sandwich, he's never going to go there again. Right, so it's a a lot of diligence is needed for that. So based on this, I think we have covered a lot of topics here. I would like to have people have any questions. It'll be important for us to address that rather than talk in generality. So any questions out there?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm asking a question on behalf of the small investors to the big boys here. So there are a lot of these alternate investment funds that have come out. We even have a microbrewery focused fund. And then as we speak today, there's another concept being launched in Ahmedabad. What would you say about the future for small investors to invest in the restaurant and the brewery or the beverage business as a small investor? Through some of these funds, through some of these alternate channels that exist today, where do you think the future is in fragmented ownership or crowdsourcing, whichever way you put it?
If you ask me, I think this business requires a lot of deep hand holding, right? And I think if you are going to put a small check in some company, your risk is as good as anybody else because you never know, right? You're better off putting it into a professional, right? Maybe it is crowdsourcing but a professional to manage it, because this requires management, right? I've heard this many times, like, I want to put a small check into this, right? Will it be successful, right? I wouldn't put my hard-earned money into something if you're not professionally looking at it, right? That's my perspective. So, I've had a lot of people going and saying, I want to invest in this business, right? But how involved can you be? And how much involvement does the founder agree to that, right? Will agree to take your input. So if you ask me, I wouldn't put it on directly. I would put it through funds. I'm not saying there are not just venture funds. There are a lot of funds out there whom you can question, right? We get questioned as a venture capitalist. I get questioned every week. What is happening to my money, right? So anybody puts money into anything, you are going to be answerable, right? So anybody else, any other perspective?
Yeah. So I think a couple of additions. So when you're writing angel checks, it makes sense to write where you have a direct value addition or at least a very deep understanding. So angels, fundamentally, the term was coined because people who used to really play the role of angels, while in India it got so popularized that everyone started writing a micro check and they consider angels, but they're not playing the role of angels. But you can play the role of angel only if you are coming from that particular industry. Like in US, SaaS businesses got funded by technology professionals or tech founders. Same, if you want to invest direct angel check, maybe if you come from that industry, you will have better judgment of the founder, better judgment of the category. Even if they don't allow you to intervene much in the business, but at least you have a better decision making in terms of where you're investing. But as an investor, if we also look at the life cycle of the funds, that in US, a lot of category focused funds coming in, while Middle Eastern investors want to invest more into agnostic fund. This comes also from in your life cycle of investing where you are. So if you have already taken exposure into a couple of funds, maybe you can start looking at a couple of type of companies, you can start looking at sector focused. But usually if you're creating a portfolio of 20, 30 companies in next 4 or 5 years, it's better to go agnostic because you're avoiding that concentration risk. And that can happen if you have a ticket size. You can do either multiple sector focused fund. If you want to do in one fund, maybe you can do into one agnostic fund. So that way, at least on your individual portfolio level, try to have that diversity. But direct checks only if you really can play a role of angels. I think that would be my point.
Fair.
See, I'll share my journey as an angel investor. So earlier when I used to invest, I had no idea. I looked at the founder and I would write a check because I want to support the founder. I saw that, you cannot add value by doing that. So that's when we started looking at how can we become a network and support an entrepreneur. Today in my network, I would get specialization from multiple entrepreneurs who have all built companies, who have had huge exits or have failed. So that is a very important aspect when you're at an early stage investment. So I do see the problem and the opportunity that you're specifying. There are many people who want to write checks. I have done many investor master classes in tier 2, tier 3 cities for many networks. I have seen people who were in stock markets, they would write checks. But 3 months later, they say, sir, paisa chahiye. Can I sell my shares? So people don't understand this asset class. This asset class requires a lot of patience. In my experience, it takes 10 to 12 years for an exit to happen. Otherwise, it's a write-off. You should have the guts to write off an investment. If you don't have that, you should not get into this asset class. That's one. The other one is, in India, I do see an opportunity to create a mutual fund type of an instrument purely for risky investments like angel investment or seed investment. That is yet to happen. We are talking to various policymakers. So even if I can put 5,000 rupee SIP into this asset class, it will be a very good thing when I'm investing, let's say 30, 40,000 rupees every month saving. So it can create a huge pool because India requires a very large amount of risk capital today because we got entrepreneurs, but we don't have the money to back them up, the risk capital to back them up. So I do see a huge opportunity coming in the next 5 years for people who want to write smaller checks, but monthly they want to put a SIP on angel investments.
I think what he's saying is, even you can look at, there are a lot of angel groups, right? I know there's an angel list. There is who do the work for you, right? You can write small checks for 5,000. Like I'm just saying, LetsVenture is one of the, they kind of club a lot of funds, and then they have a fund manager who will give you updates and all that. So there are different ways to do that, right? But what they are saying is very true. Unless you have the wherewithal and the appetite to stay the long course, I don't think you're better off investing in public markets.
I just want to add one more thing, which is I think domain expertise matters. Now, having been in the beer business now for a long time, I can tell you the length of a pipe and the diameter of the pipe will dictate the quality of my beer, right? So it comes down to that level of detail and that level of obsessive detail. So if you're going to invest, for example, let's assume there was a microbrewery mutual fund, right?
Which exists, by the way.
Which exists, right? If I were you, I would look at what domain expertise do those people have in brewing, number one. Do their ethics match my own ethics, right? And number two, what is their track record? Have they been able to deliver something that has been successful in the past? But I can tell you from the inside, deep domain expertise in the area is required in order for a business to be successful.
Well said. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Anybody? Go ahead. Is there any more questions? Otherwise, this would be the last. Oh. Can you keep it quick and short? And even we will try to keep it short.
So my question to you, Sharad, hi, this is Advait. How does your decision making getting influenced when you also see products which are health conscious and not health conscious? For example, you talk about boba tea, right? Too much sugar. We have lot of influencers across Bangalore, across other parts of country, which talk about how sugar is impacting India, how India can be a diabetic capital. So how these decision or how these statements helps or make your decision making for future investments? And not only to boba tea, but in general, how much you think from a health conscious perspective, whether it should be given to India or whether I should also contribute in increasing these kind of diseases, those kind of things I wanted to understand.
Yeah, so I think as a VC, so we are not having the allocation for behavioral change in the community. So how do we look at it is a customer segmentation. So one customer segment that wants to have boba tea and they might want to reduce their caffeine consumption or a tea consumption, and they don't mind sugar at that level. And there is a different customer segment who is more sugar sensitive, that okay, I might have a black coffee, but I wouldn't consume too much sugar. And health wise also, I'm not the expert nutritionally there, but different elements work differently on the different human bodies, right? So from a investor lens, my role is to understand that how well the founder understand that particular customer segment for which they're building. So let's say if I talk about founder of Boba Bhai, how do they understand that category which will consume? While at the same time, if I'm evaluating a protein brand or a health conscious brand, I would understand that, okay, how well they understand that ingredient, what their consumer look for in it. And we will take an independent decision, both of them. And this has happened with us even in the fashion category. So whether I invest into a fast fashion brand or not. And we have been going through this debate internally also, that there is one brand which is adopting technology and reducing and making this entire life cycle more capital efficient, but that is fast fashion. So there is some sustainability angle in one side and it's not in other side. So you have to take a call that where you want to deploy that capital as an investor.
Okay, last question. Anybody?
Hi, this is Soumya Raj. I'm founder of Atreya Exports. My brand name is called Swasthya. I am into a segment which is a growing segment, that is wherein I am looking at futuristic food, where health is combined with elimination of efforts on cooking part. So I am looking at food wherein In our generation, we used to cook like, okay, I maintain 101 spices, pick things, and use my cooking skill to build a recipe. But my recipes are in such a way that, you get tasty food just in 10 minutes, which is healthy. So to the investors, my question is, how do you look at this healthy food segment, which is futuristic too, wherein you don't need to have any cooking skill as such? I can eliminate 10 cooks and place my product in a restaurant telling that, okay, use your 10 minutes and the food comes out very quickly. Is this a segment that an investor would look at in the long run?
Absolutely. Why not? Because health is becoming very important, and there is a segment of customers who only consume healthy food. For example, if you take ancient India, sattus used to be the earliest, instant food. People would carry sattus